Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today, we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. The air was thick with the intoxicating scent of expensive perfume and fresh roses, mingling together in a fragrant symphony that filled the vast hall. Glittering chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their crystal facets casting a mesmerizing dance of light across the room. Every surface gleamed, from the polished marble floors to the elegantly adorned tables, where guests sat draped in their finest attire. Laughter and hushed whispers rippled through the space, echoing against the high walls as anticipation built like a crescendo in a symphony of celebration. This wedding was not merely an event. It was a statement, an exhibition of elegance and extravagance designed to be remembered. The flash of cameras punctuated the air as society's elite documented every moment, ensuring that not a single second of this grand affair would go unnoticed. At the altar, I stood tall, my suit impeccable, my tie precisely knotted, every inch of me reflecting the meticulous planning that had gone into this day. From the golden hues of the floral arrangements to the carefully folded napkins on the reception tables, every detail had been orchestrated to perfection. This was meant to be our moment, the beginning of forever, a flawless celebration of love. And yet, beneath the surface of this polished facade, an inexplicable unease simmered within me. My hands remained steady, my face composed, but deep inside, something felt undeniably off. Then she appeared, Sophia. She was breathtaking, an ethereal vision wrapped in delicate lace that clung to her slender frame, her veil flowing behind her like a whisper of silk. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a fleeting moment, the rest of the world ceased to exist. The nagging doubts that had haunted me in the moments leading up to this all but disappeared. She was my bride, the woman I had chosen. But then Margaret stepped forward. Sophia's mother was a force of nature, as ever-present as the shadows cast by the chandeliers. From the moment I proposed, it had been clear that Margaret was not just a mother-in-law. She was a fixture in our relationship, an unyielding presence that Sophia had never truly broken free from. I had convinced myself that marriage would change things, that once we exchanged vows, Sophia and I would build a life of our own, free from her mother's influence. That illusion shattered the moment Margaret's sharp gaze swept across the room and settled on me. "You're in my seat," she said softly. The words were quiet, but in the stunned silence that followed, they may as well have been shouted through a microphone. My brows furrowed as confusion set in. That seat beside Sophia was mine. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the sudden tension crackling in the air. Sophia smiled, but it was hollow, an empty expression that barely concealed the unease flickering in her eyes. A murmur spread through the room, guests exchanging uncertain glances, their attention locked on the unfolding scene. This isn't happening. This can't be real. I turned to Sophia, searching for an answer, but before I could speak, Margaret leaned in, her voice a quiet plea. "Just do it. Please." Something inside me twisted. The unease that had been lingering all evening solidified into something darker, something far more dangerous. My pulse thrummed in my ears as I turned my gaze back to Margaret. Her expression remained poised, but for the first time I saw the cracks beneath the surface, the desperation hidden beneath the polished exterior. "No." The single word left my lips with unwavering finality, and then Sophia moved. The sharp, stinging slap echoed to the hall like a gunshot, silencing every murmur, every whisper. Gasps rippled through the room, some guests frozen in shock, while others shifted in their seats, suddenly uncomfortable. The cameras caught everything. I didn't flinch. I didn't even move. The sting on my cheek was nothing compared to the deeper wound that had just been inflicted. Something raw, something irreparable. Humiliation, betrayal. Sophia's hands trembled at her sides, her expression a volatile mix of rage and regret. Her lips parted, perhaps to offer an apology, but the damage was done. I wasn't sure if she even knew what she was apologizing for, slapping me in front of hundreds of guests or revealing, in one single act, that I had never truly mattered. Beyond her, Margaret stood motionless, unaffected. And then she smiled. In that moment, clarity struck like lightning. Sophia had never been fully mine. She had always belonged to her mother. I had been a pawn in their carefully curated world, a piece in a puzzle where I had never truly fit. I inhaled slowly, adjusting my suit with precise movement, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside me. The weight of countless eyes pressing down on me didn't matter anymore. With an exhale, I turned on my heel and walked away. Sophia's voice rose behind me, but her words were lost beneath the rhythmic sound of my footsteps against the marble floor. The room behind me dissolved into chaos. Margaret's sobs, the frantic murmurs of stunned guests, the frenzied movement of cameras desperate to capture every second. But none of it mattered. Stepping outside, the cool evening air wrapped around me, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere I had just left behind. Reaching up, I loosened my tie, finally allowing myself to breathe. A valet approached, but I waved him off. I needed a moment to process, to accept what had just happened. Then my phone rang. "Kevin, are you crazy?" His voice was a mix of disbelief and concern. "She slapped me, Kev," I said evenly, gripping the steering wheel of my car. A pause. Then a sharp exhale. "Man, this is everywhere. Social media is blowing up." I didn't need to check my phone to know that what was supposed to be a dream wedding had turned into a very public disaster. Kevin sighed. "Margaret is having a full meltdown. Some guests think you should have just gone through with it, apologized and taken the seat. But most people think she crossed the line." I closed my eyes. Of course, there would be those who believed I should have swallowed my pride, sat beside Sophia, and allowed myself to be reduced to nothing in front of an entire crowd. But if I had done that, what kind of man would I have been? A man who spent the rest of his life bowing to Margaret's will? That wasn't me. It never would be. Kevin hesitated. Margaret tried to grab the mic, but security had to intervene. That almost made me laugh. "I don't care what she says." I muttered, "You sure?" A beat of silence. Then, "I'll handle things here, but you should probably lay low." The call ended. A notification flashed on my phone screen. Trending now. The slap heard around the world. Runaway groom or rightful escape? Mother-in-law from hell? I shut off my phone and tossed it onto the passenger seat, leaning my forehead against the steering wheel. I took a deep, grounding breath. Then, without looking back, I started the car and drove. Somewhere, anywhere, far from the chaos I had just left behind. Sophia crumpled to the floor, the voluminous folds of her white dress spreading around her like the fallen wings of a broken angel. Her breath hitched in uneven sobs, her delicate frame shaking as tears traced glistening paths down her flushed cheeks. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, her voice a fragile plea lost in the cavernous silence of the grand hall. She repeated the phrase over and over, as if saying enough times could rewind the moment, could undo the damage. But there was no going back now. Margaret loomed over her daughter like a shadow, her hands clenched into rigid fists. Her voice was sharp as shattered glass. "Get up, Sophia. Stop embarrassing yourself," she hissed. Her words laced with fury and disappointment. But Sophia didn't move. She barely seemed to register her mother's command. For the first time since the chaos unfolded, her father, James, stepped forward. His heavy presence filled the space between them, his voice low and brimming with something far more dangerous than anger, disappointment. "Sophia," he said, his tone weighted with years of unspoken truths. "What did you expect?" Margaret's eyes flashed with indignation as she whirled on him. He should have listened. He should have... "Enough!" James' voice sliced through the tension like a blade. A hush fell over the room. His normally composed face was unreadable, but his steely gaze locked onto his wife with an unrelenting finality. "This is on you." A collective gasp rippled through the wedding guests. Margaret stiffened. "What are you talking about?" James exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "You raised her to believe she could always have her way. You raised her to think your word was law. And now look at what you've done." He gestured at the wreckage of what was supposed to be a perfect day. The hushed murmurs of scandalized guests, the horrified expressions, the flashing cameras capturing every second of their disgrace. Sophia broke into fresh sobs, her whole body trembling with the weight of humiliation. But Margaret's expression twisted, her lips curling into a mask of pure fury. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice like poison seeping into the air. Meanwhile, outside the grand hall, social media erupted. Memes, headlines, debates. The slap wedding was no longer just a personal disaster. It was a public spectacle. Sophia was ridiculed. James distanced himself from her. Business partnerships were severed, sponsorships withdrawn. She wasn't just humiliated, she was ruined. Margaret, ever defiant, refused to admit fault. If he were a real man, he would have stayed, she told reporters, her voice dripping with disdain. But I was done playing their game. Weeks later, Kevin called me. "Dude, Sophia's a mess. She hasn't left her apartment." I watched the waves crash against the shore, took a slow sip of my drink, and let out a breath. Not my problem. Kevin sighed. "Man, you really don't care, huh?" Silence stretched between us, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't. That should have been the end of it. But then one night, my phone rang. The name flashing on the screen made me hesitate. Sophia. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Weeks of ignored calls, deleted messages. She should have gotten a hint by now. And yet, something about this call felt different. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was broken. "I'm sorry, Nate." She could barely get the words out, her breath hitching as though she had been crying for hours. "Please, I just need to see you one last time." I let out a slow breath, my voice cold and distant. "Why?" She sniffled. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I need to fix this. Just let me see you. You don't even have to talk. I don't want this to be how we end." I should have said no. But curiosity, or perhaps the ghost of what we once were, made me agree. When I arrived at the restaurant, I immediately realized my mistake. A high-end venue in the heart of the city, the kind where the elite dined, where even the waitstaff dressed in tailored suits. The air was thick with something unnatural, something staged. I felt it before I even saw them. Reporters, scattered strategically throughout the restaurant, pretending to be ordinary customers, clutching their drinks with feigned ease, sneaking glances at me, cameras at the ready. This was a trap. Before I could turn and leave, I heard her voice. "Nate." She stood at the entrance, dressed deliberately, a long, elegant gown, hair styled to perfection, makeup crafted to give her the look of a fragile, shattered woman, the perfect victim. She took a few hesitant steps forward, her eyes glistening, and right on cue, the tears fell. The cameras flashed. She thought she could manipulate the narrative, thought she could make me the villain who abandoned her. She had another thing coming. As she let out a soft, heartbroken sob, loud enough for the hidden microphones to capture, I tilted my head, my expression unreadable. The room held its breath. Sophia blinked rapidly, as if she hadn't expected me to challenge her. "So this was your plan?" I asked, my voice cold. Whispers rippled through the restaurant. The so-called diners, her planted audience, shifted in their seats. The energy shifted. The trap was unraveling. Sophia's carefully crafted vulnerability cracked. "Nate, that's not." I cut her off. "You didn't want to see me," I said, my voice carrying through the space. "You want an audience." The tension was suffocating. I turned to one of the cameras, smirking. "Congrats. You got it." The photographers hesitated, realizing they were now part of the story. Sophia paled. "Please, Nate, I reached for a microphone from a nearby musician, silencing the entire room. "Let me tell the truth." Sophia's breath caught. She knew what was coming. This woman didn't come here to apologize. She doesn't miss me. I gestured at the stunned audience. She misses the security I provided, the status, the money, the power. And now that it's gone, she's lost. Sophia's hands clenched into fists. "Nate, stop it." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "You love control, but you lost me." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't for show. She knew I meant it. "You lost me forever, Sophia." I dropped the mic. And then, with the weight of every manipulation and betrayal lifting off my shoulders, I turned and walked away. The cool night air greeted me like an old friend. Behind me, the restaurant erupted into chaos. Reporters swarming Sophia, her sobs turning to disbelief, the entire orchestrated performance crumbling around her. And online, the internet was on fire. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.